Hey gamers, Chris here. So what is the most underrated lighting spell in the game? Light? Yeah, well, light's a great cantrip. It does 20 feet of bright light, 20 feet of dim light. You can cast it on a rock, toss it down a well, toss it down to the end of the hallway. You can cast it on an arrow, shoot it a long distance. You can cast it on your shield, so it's just hanging around with you all the time. Lasts for an hour, it doesn't use your concentration, but you know what? We already knew light is a great cantrip. So I'm not talking about light. So what about control flames? Well, control flames is an interesting cantrip because you can cast it on your lantern, and your lantern's normally giving you 30 feet of bright light, 30 more feet of dim light. Now it's going to become 60 feet of bright light, 60 feet of dim light. That's not even if you're talking about a bullseye lantern, which can go much, much further. So yeah, control flames is pretty good as a lighting cantrip, but that's not what I'm talking about. What about produce flame? Well, produce flame does create light, but it isn't a very good cantrip, and I don't think it's underrated. If anything, it's overrated. What about prestidigitation to light a candle? Well, yeah, prestidigitation is a great spell. I don't think it's a good lighting spell. The spell, obviously, I'm talking about is Dancing Lights. I mean, read the title of the video. So how is Dancing Lights underrated? That's the topic for today's video, so welcome to Treantmonk's Temple. So here's the Dancing Lights spell. Cantrip, 1 action casting, 120 foot range, has verbal, somatic, and material component, lasts only a minute, and uses your concentration. This is why this spell is generally not considered very good, because you're using concentration, of course. Concentration can be interrupted. If it's interrupted, then you lose your light, and 1 minute doesn't last very long. You create 4 torch-sized lights within range, making them appear as torches, lanterns, glowing orbs that hover in the air for the duration. You can also combine the lights into one vaguely glowing humanoid form of medium size. Whichever form you choose, each light sheds dim light in a 10-foot radius. As a bonus action on your turn, you can move them up to 60 feet, all of them. All the lights have to be within 20 feet of another light created by this spell, and if you go beyond your range, the light winks out. So if we look at it, there's a lot of things wrong with this spell right off the bat. Only a minute. Uses your concentration. Has limited range, only sheds dim light, and not over a big radius. So why on earth do I think this spell is underrated? The main reason I think it's underrated is because you're creating 4 glowing points that you can move, and they can float around wherever. A light cast on a stone, you have to hold, or then you throw it, and then it's immobile. Dancing Lights gives you a lot more versatility in where you place your light and what you do with it. Now, one of the abilities this spell has that I think isn't very good is the ability to combine the lights into a vaguely glowing humanoid form. Because what does vaguely glowing humanoid form even mean? Is that something that can appear something like a ghost? Or is that just light that happens to be shaped like a person? It kind of sounds like the latter. And if it's the latter, then it really can't be mistaken for a person or a creature. So what's the point of that? I'm not quite sure I get what that ability is even supposed to do or how to use it. If you know a good way to use that part of Dancing Lights, let me know in the comments down below. But where I do think the spell is useful is just those 4 glowing orbs or torches, whatever you want them to be, and being able to move those around independently. Let me show you an example. So here's our party. Now let's say we are in darkness. So we're traveling outside at night, and it's cloudy, there's no stars, no moonlight, so it is dark. Now, using a Dancing Lights spell, we can arrange them, as you can see right here. And in this case, what we've got is, we've got our party completely shrouded by darkness. But what we have is the lights put in a way around the party that they shed light in 3 different directions, and we could do 4, but that of course would limit the range forward we could see. In this formation, you can see that we can actually see 40 feet ahead, same as we could if we were using a light spell. But in addition, we have obscured the party. So this gives a defensive boost while still providing us the light we need to see. Now, it is dim light, so things that are hidden are harder to see, but that isn't a huge deal. Most of the time we're using light, it's to see things that would have been visible as long as they're in light. So if we travel in this formation, we improve our ability to defend ourselves while keeping our ability to illuminate enemies. Now that 60-foot movement with the bonus action is more than you think once you look at it on a battle map. And that 120-foot range, again, is a great range for this spell. So let's take a look here. We maybe hear something far in the distance. And if we zoom out, we can see there are some enemies ahead. We can hear them, we cannot see them. Now, they can see some lights ahead of them, but they don't see us. That means we're safe from spells that target things that you can see. Furthermore, any attacks on us are going to be made with disadvantage, so probably going to miss. Now we'll say that these enemies are relying on dark vision. Maybe they're elves or something like that. So if we look at their ranges, we can see that the closest enemy is still 85 feet away. So unless there's something like drow or deep gnomes, they're not going to be able to see us at this range. Can we see them? Well, we can as soon as we use a bonus action, because then on the spellcaster's turn, they can now move these lights. So we can see by moving these lights just 60 feet straight ahead, this is not imaginative at all, we're just throwing everything straight ahead 60 feet, we've illuminated an enemy spellcaster. This is the guy who was in the back, probably thought they were safe. Now they're illuminated, we can target them with arrows, we can target them with spells. That spellcaster's now in a lot of trouble. However, we haven't given up our own defense. And unlike with a light spell, if you were to say throw a light spell on a rock or shoot it with an arrow, these lights are not immobile now. We can still move them every round. So we haven't fully illuminated everybody yet. So maybe next round we're going to use our bonus action again. And we kind of move things around randomly to see where the enemies are. And eventually, lo and behold, we find 4 more enemies. Now, all the enemies are illuminated. And if they move out of that illumination, we can simply have it follow them. So that's the way it's different than a light spell. With a light spell, you shoot an arrow down a hallway, you illuminate the enemy. They can then move out of that light, and there's nothing you can do about it unless you cast light again and then send it out again. This case, we're using a bonus action every round. We can move them with our enemies. They're like spotlights, keeping them illuminated no matter where they move, so that we can constantly target them. Well, we're still shrouded in darkness. And being shrouded in darkness is all kinds of useful. I mean, yes, they probably have an idea where our characters are, but if one of our characters is a rogue, they might use a cunning action to hide. They no longer need cover. They can hide wherever they want. And while our melee characters are rushing ahead, our characters who use ranged weapons, including probably our spellcaster who's controlling this dancing light, remain back. They remain safe, shrouded in darkness at high range. Now that dancing light user can throw ranged cantrips at enemies with impunity. Now if the enemies start rushing ahead, we can potentially cut them off at the pass with our melee characters, preventing them from ever being able to visibly see the spellcasters. This makes the dancing lights fairly safe because it is going to be difficult for those enemies to target that spellcaster that is controlling those dancing lights. But if that dancing light is lost because of a loss of concentration or the duration runs out, it will take one action to recast the spell and re-illuminate everything. There are other ways this can be useful as well beyond what you can do with a light spell. So let's say you're in that dark cavern and you've been traveling and then you find that brackish pool. You always find that in somewhere in the dungeon, and the idea is you don't want to step in there because you know something awful is going to be at the bottom. Then again, treasure might be at the bottom, so you kind of want to find that. Furthermore, maybe you have to cross this pool to get to the other side, and assuming we're a low-level party, things like fly and water walk probably aren't available. So what we can do is we can take the globes and we can send them under the water, illuminating that brackish water, so now we can see in there. And then we highlight our enemies, and if they're a fully aquatic creature, they can't come out and get us. If they are a creature that can come out of the water, we're prepared for them now. Furthermore, if there is treasure down there, we can find it. So we can determine whether it's safe to cross, if there's treasure, all those things with dancing lights. We can explore the entire pool with them. And that's not so easy to do with a light spell, because a light spell, of course, once you send it into the water with a glowing rock, it's then immobile. Now, you could potentially cast it on another rock and throw that somewhere else, another rock and move that somewhere else. What if things are moving around? Furthermore, what if you can't reach all those areas or easily get light to those areas? Maybe there's a rock and you need to get underneath it. You can do all these things with dancing lights, can't do it with the light spell. Same thing with the well. With the well, of course, it's well known you can take a light and you can cast it on a rock and drop it down the well and kind of watch it go down. But with dancing lights, you can send them down with purpose. You can send them down exploring the sides of the well, if there's anything hidden in there, all the way down 60 feet around. We don't just keep on falling. We can stop now at 120 feet, take a good look, see what's down there. And if there is an enemy in that well, again, the light isn't just falling right past them. We now have them. We can stop the lights right there. We can target that enemy before it comes jumping out of the well. You start looking down the well and then something's going to come up at you. So you have those lights in place. You illuminate it as they're coming up. Now you're ready for them. Another way dancing lights could be useful is going back to our map here. Let's say this archer right up here has completed a stealth, and now we can't see or hear them, except maybe the spellcaster made a perception roll that the others didn't, or maybe our spellcaster has perception that others don't have access to, and now they want to let the rest of the party know where this hidden foe is, so they can use it as a spotlight again. Put it right on the middle, right on their head. Now all the party knows exactly where to attack. Even if that foe is invisible, they will still be able to attack, at least with disadvantage. They'll know at least where to attack. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Order of the Stick. They did this comic a while back where they used dancing lights as a long-range beacon. Of course, it could be used as a long-range beacon. You send it 120 feet straight up. I mean, you could potentially even have codes. The movement of the dancing lights might signify different things. So maybe 4 in a line means one thing, 4 in a diamond shape means another. Maybe if the top one moves up and down, that means something else. You could create all kinds of signals. You could potentially even do an entire language that way and communicate over very long distances. And of course, there's always creative uses in terms of, say, distraction. Maybe the 4 glowing orbs come out of a forest and they appear like will-o-wisps. Or maybe the torchlight from the dancing lights appears and an enemy might think that an ally of yours is approaching from another direction. It might alter their tactics to some degree. Now, these are circumstantial and they rely on a friendly DM that is open to that kind of use. But that's another way they can be used. So tactically, I think there's a lot of good uses for dancing lights. In fact, I think tactically they're better than light. The problem with them is, of course, the concentration. The duration actually isn't a huge problem because you can cast it over and over and over again. Worst case scenario, it runs out once in a combat and then you have to cast it one time again. But the concentration could be an issue because you can lose that concentration and then you have to cast it again. Still, I think tactically there are a lot of good uses for this to keep your party defended and keep your enemies illuminated. Now, this isn't something for high-level characters. I mean, if I'm 15th level, I'm not going to want to use my concentration on a dancing light spell. But what if I'm a first-level character or a second-level character? How many things am I concentrating on? Probably nothing. So I do think dancing lights ends up being underrated, because it has uses that we can't get from lanterns. So I do like dancing lights on my characters. I don't think it levels well. It's not something that's going to scale into high levels, but at low levels I find it very useful. How about you? What do you think of dancing lights? Have you used it? Have you come up with any uses for it that I haven't come up with? If so, please tell me in the comments down below. And that's it. Dancing Lights Cantrip. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Until then, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to relax. And I'm going to have some fun because D&D is for everyone. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time.